Chapter 11, Winning with Peer Review Scoring Factors. In this chapter, getting your grant application past the technical review, peeking in on the peer review process, writing to score higher peer review points, exploring evaluation assistance options, gaining insight into the federal funding process as a peer reviewer. Consider the grant writing process. You open your email to find the daily alert from GrantsGov or another funding alert subscription database. As you scroll through the alerts, you find a notice that looks perfect for your organization. You quickly click the handy link to read the notice of funding availability, NOFA, synopsis. Wow, you may be onto something here. Now you click through again to read the full grant application announcement. Yes, your organization qualifies to apply for this funding. Yes, your organization is ready, capable, to take on this challenge with the intent of finishing first. And finally, you see that 55 grants will be awarded. Jackpot. Go. Green flag. The competition will be stiff, but at least your organization has a chance at winning some of Uncle Sam or your trademark Sign-S money. You even have all your collaborative partners on board, and a third-party evaluator has stepped up to write the evaluation plan section of the grant application of your trademark Sign-S narrative. Chapter 10 explains partnerships in a section called ARO. Considering the use of third-party evaluators is included later in this chapter, the stars are aligning for this grant application to really happen. Now that everything with your trademark Sign-S falling into place, you are your trademark Sign-R ready to start writing your grant application narrative. This chapter provides an overview of what your trademark Sign-S required based on standard government agency review criteria. I get into specifics for each part of the application in Part 4. Remember that writing to meet a grant application or your trademark Sign-S review criteria is as important as identifying the right funding source and preparing your response. Remember, in general, the basics of review criteria apply to all types of grant guidelines. Because government guidelines are the most rigid, I use them as my example throughout this chapter. Trust me, you can write anything if you can write government grant applications. Let me say that again, you can write anything if you can write government grant applications. Complying with the technical review requirements. When you first submit a grant application to a federal agency for funding consideration, your application goes through a technical review process, or simply pre-review. This pre-review includes checking to see whether your trademark Sign-R completed and signed all the required forms. The pre-review process also verifies your compliance with formatting instructions and checks the page length of your narrative and all other documents. Many government grant and cooperative agreement applications have narrative length restrictions, such as no more than 20 double-space pages. A couple of the federal grant-making agencies have even cut their page limits down to 10 pages. We can collectively celebrate when all of the 26 grant-making agencies replicate this less is more approach. Remember, the narrative is the body or main event in your grant application. ITA circumflex your trademark Sign-S where you write about your organization or your trademark Sign-S history and capability as a grant applicant, the statement of need for grant funding, and the program design, plan of action, for planning and implementing the grant-funded program. In addition, the narrative of a grant application also contains writing sections for the program or your trademark Sign-S management plan, key personnel responsibilities, and task descriptions, the evaluation plan, the sustainability statement, and the budget details and summary. Warning. If you fail to pass one of the pre-review mandatory checks, your application does not your trademark Sign-R move from the pre-review phase to the peer review phase. When you first read a grant or cooperative agreement opportunity announcement, refer to Chapter 10 for more on these announcements. Some basic information points can give you clues about how to set up your word processing software to correctly format the narrative. As you read through the formatting instructions, pay attention to the following information. The quicker you find this often buried information in the Notice of Funding Availability, NOFA, the sooner you can get started with the writing process. The line spacing required, this can be single or double. Either way, it matters. Search the announcement for the word ARO singular or ARO double or to quickly find the line spacing requirements. This approach is the easiest way to find and note line spacing requirements. The font type and size you must use. Search the announcement for the word ARO font to quickly find the font type and size requirements. Not all grants require a specified font, but many do. How page limits and page numbers are handled. Most grant application narratives have page limits. The limitations may apply only to the narrative, or they may apply to the narrative plus all the mandatory or required attachments. Typically, extra narrative supporting charts, RA copyright SUMA copyright S, letters of commitment, and other documents are considered a part of the attachments. When they're your trademark sign included in the page count, it can be stressful for the grant writer. Page numbering can also present due diligence moments. The pagination requirements can begin with the first form and end with the last page in the appendixes, or can apply only to the narrative section of the requests. Some funding agencies also require that you write an abstract. Read more about how to create an abstract in Chapter 13. Keep in mind that e-grant applications, where the entire grant application is filled out online, have character limits as opposed to pagination requirements found in a hard copy grant application. Remember, in addition to the formatting requirements, the instructions may include specific program requirements. To be sure of the requirements, check the funding announcement before preparing your application. Remember, always read the grant application guidelines and then be sure to follow the instructions for forms and formatting to the letter. Formatting when you earn a trademark sign to given specs. For the roughly 10% of government funding agency announcements that don't your trademark sign to specify font type and size requirements for writing the grant application or your trademark sign S narrative, I recommend you call the program officer and ask about the preferred formatting. This way, you can your trademark sign to go wrong and you eliminate guessing and stressing. Understanding the importance of the peer review process. After you pass the technical review process, and I know you will, your application goes to a peer review panel to begin the peer review process. A peer review panel usually includes at least 3 experts from around the country who work in the field that the grant competition is directed to. ITA circumflex your trademark sign is called a peer review because now your trademark sign re-accepted or rejected by your peers, not by a government program officer. Each reviewer gives a numerical score to each application reviewed. In most instances, the scoring of your entire grant application package is based on a total of 100 points, and typically your grant application needs to score in the high 90s in order to be recommended for the grant award. Explanatory statements on a formal rating form support the numerical score. For each section of the application or your trademark sign S review criteria that was published in the grant's Gov announcement, reviewers describe your application or your trademark sign S major strengths and weaknesses. Tip: peer reviews can be fickle about what they like and dislike. Be careful not to deviate from any of the grant application guidelines or your trademark sign S headings, subheadings, bullets, or specific word-for-word narrative section headings. Read and retype to guide the peer reviewers through their part of the application or your trademark sign S evaluation process. You may wonder what happens if 2 peer reviewers were to rate you highly, 95 points or higher, and the third reviewer rates you below the cutoff score for an award. After each reviewer independently scores your application, all 3 get together, over the telephone or in person, and discuss and defend their scores. The general rule is that all 3 reviewers must come within 10 points of each other in order for an application to go one way or the other. Often, after discussion, application scores change, sometimes in your favor and sometimes not. Knowing how much to write in your narrative sections. Most government grant application narratives are weighted for a total of 100 possible points. The most comprehensive writing section of any grant application narrative is usually the program design section because this is where you write your goals, measurable objectives, implementation strategies, and timelines, create a logic model, develop the management plan, and comply with any additional information requested by the funding agency. See the later section ARO incorporating national models in your program implementation strategy. See or in Chapter 16 for more on this important section. Warning. Some government agencies assign more than 100 points to the narrative sections of grant applications. Read every word in the guidelines so you know what to shoot for. You may need to write extra response sections to be considered eligible for the additional review points. See the next section for more details. In the example that follows in this section, note that the largest point section is the program design, management plan, and evaluation methodologies section, which weighs in at 50 points. Because program design is worth 50% of the entire grant application, your trademark Sign-S scoring schematic of 100 points, you want to take more time to research and write this section of your grant application narrative. If the funding agency or your trademark Sign-S formatting instructions tell you that the grant application narrative cannot or trademark Sign-T exceed 20 single-space pages, you want to earmark 50% of the 20 pages, so 10 pages, for the program design and methodologies section. Tip: when you know the maximum number of pages that you or your trademark sign are allowed to write for the entire grant application narrative, you can take the total points, 100 points, and divide them by the points for each section. Translate this number into a percentage, and you know how many pages you need to write in each narrative section to fulfill the peer reviewer's or trademark sign expectations. In the following lists, I note the maximum number of pages you should write in each narrative section based on a 20-page limit. I also provide you with some of the questions that peer reviewers keep in mind when reading your application. Remember, the total possible peer review score for your grant application is 100 points. Note, the point values I included are fairly typical, but the values vary from application to application, as do the section headings. Here are your trademark Sign-S how it breaks down. Statement of need are 20 points, 20% of 20 pages equals 4 pages for this section. Does the application specify those issues that this project will address from the list of issues facing the target population? Overall, is this project likely to successfully address the issues identified? Will the target population be involved in the design and implementation of the project? Does the project meet the objectives of the funding and provide sufficient justification for funding the proposal? See Chapter 15 for more about the statement of need. Program design, management plan, and evaluation methodologies are 50 points. 50% of 20 pages equals 10 pages for this section. What are the goals and measurable objectives for the project? Are they aligned with the purpose of the funding as articulated in the grant announcement? Are the proposed program activities likely to achieve the stated goals and objectives? Is the scope and duration of the program adequate to achieve the proposed outcomes? Have collaborative partners been included in the planning of the program design, and will they remain involved in the project or trademark Sign-S implementation? Is the appropriate research base used to support the proposed interventions? Is the logic model comprehensive? Does the applicant provide an impact statement? Are the evaluation designs and methodologies adequate to measure the extent to which program indicators and outcomes are being met? Is there evidence of strong and adequate project management, including key staff and their functions, timelines, accounting procedures, reporting, and collaborative efforts with the partner organizations? See Chapters 16 and 17 for more on these specific details. Applicant capability are 20 points. 20% of 20 pages equals 4 pages for this section. How long has the grant applicant been in operation? Does the grant applicant have sufficient human and financial resources to implement the project successfully? Does the grant applicant have previous experience and expertise in working with the proposed target population in or delivering similar services? Has the grant applicant managed federal grants previously? What were the outcomes of these previously funded programs? Number served, measurable benchmarks achieved, and other statistical indicators demonstrating implementation success. What is the grant applicant or trademark Sign-S organizational structure? Is the board of directors hands-on and involved in providing management and financial oversight to administrative staff? Are there clear lines of accountability in the organizational chart? Budget and sustainability are 10 points. 10% of 20 pages equals 2 pages for this section. Is there an appropriate amount of money allocated to each key activity task? Is the total budget allocation adequate to reach project goals? Can the applicant sustain the grant-funded program after the funding period has ended? What % of the applicant or trademark Sign-S total project cost is in kind, non-cash, from the applicant? What % is in kind from collaborative partners? What % is cash match from the applicant? What % is cash match from collaborative partners? See Chapter 18 for more on presenting your budget. Deploying analyzation acumen to meet the scoring process. Tip: you can get an edge on the competition by meeting the funding agency or trademark Sign-S funding priority for a specific grant competition. Funders often identify one or more priority target populations, geographic areas, or performance criteria and award a funding preference to applications that document that they meet that preference. For example, when NASA issues a NOFA for classroom-based space exploration education in summer camps, it may include an opportunity for grant applicants to earn an extra 5 or 10 funding priority, read, bonus, points if the program will be located in the Alaska and Pacific Rim regions. If NASA receives 400 applications and plans to award only 20 grants, the grant applicants who write the best of the best narratives and also meet the funding priority will be at the top of the point list for funding recommendation. Because of funding priority, a normal 100-point application, the best peer review rating possible without the funding opportunity, may be given an extra 10 points, for a total of 110 peer review points are a huge advantage over not so competitive grant applications. Writing to the peer review requirements. Before you start writing, read all guidelines for government grant applications and cooperative agreements. Then read them again. In fact, I suggest you read them 4 times, focusing on different aspects with each review. The first time through the guidelines, concentrate on the list of applicants eligible for funding. During your second read, check for due dates, number of awards, and average size of grants. The third time, look at the technical requirements. By technical requirements, I mean whether the grant competition requires that you submit your grant application to a state agency for pre-approval before the final submission due date, or that you use a specific font or adhere to line spacing and margin formatting requirements. Also, pay attention to the maximum pages allowed for the grant narrative sections. Also of importance, submitting your grant application package to GrantsGov requires adhering to the system or your trademark sign as permittable file types. The GrantsGov workspace requires PDF uploads. Your grant application package will not make it to the peer review scoring process if you fail to upload it in the requested format. 4. During the fourth review, read for narrative content requirements. The following sections walk you through the narrative content requirements for government funding applications, grants and cooperative agreements, so you can understand what you should look for in content requirements. Remember, your government funding request should contain a lot of words and phrases that you glean from the grant application guidelines in the section detailing the purpose of the grant funding. Plan to use these terms in almost every section of your grant narrative. Doing so shows that you are your trademark sign familiar with the guidelines and that your program is in line with the grant. Researching, writing, and validating a compelling statement of need. One of the major sections in government grant application narratives is the statement of need, which is usually an explanation of the problem you hope to address if you receive the grant. Normally, when you are your trademark sign rewriting a grant or cooperative agreement application, this section is worth at least 20 of the possible 100 points a review committee can grant. Tip: the statement of need is the place to write about not only your own research findings on the target population but also facts and figures garnered from regional and national research. See the area Validating Needs and Implementation Strategies or section later in this chapter for details on how to gather all the information you need before you start writing this part of your application. To win all the points allocated to this section, follow these tips. Be as comprehensive as possible in describing the needs you want to address. Be sure to address what the problem is, when it started, and how you know ITA circumflex your trademark sign as a problem. Always include results from recent community needs assessments. Doing so shows the funder that you are your trademark sign rebasing your statement of need on valid findings about your target population or community. Describe service gaps in the current service delivery system, particularly those that will be addressed with additional funding support. If your organization has a waiting list of clients who cannot or trademark sign to be served because of its limited capacity, this is a service gap. Don't your trademark sign to talk in generalities. Use current facts, statistics, quotes, and citations. Cite all your sources and stay current. Don't your trademark sign to use anything older than 5 years. Show that you know what you are your trademark sign talking about. You can do so by comparing your problems to similar problems in other communities of your size. In your statement of need, weave a story about the large black hole of gloom and doom if that your trademark sign is what you see based on the facts. Why are you a circumflex your trademark sign not exaggerating with the information you include in this section? You are your trademark sign simply writing to meet the review criteria, and you are your trademark sign readdressing each point covered in the program or your trademark sign S or agents are your trademark sign S goals. For more on communicating your needs, see Chapter 15. Incorporating national models in your program implementation strategies. Another major section in a funding request narrative is what your trademark sign S, often referred to as the program design. In this section, you lay out your strategy, or your program, for addressing the problem, S, presented in your statement of need. In grant applications and cooperative agreement narratives, this section is usually weighted more heavily than any other section of the narrative, anywhere from 25 to 40 points. In order to receive the most points possible, the program design must be sound and must contain program elements directly linked to the achievement of project objectives. Therefore, you need to write in a way that uses the language of the government agents or your trademark sign S own objectives. In other words, the program design section includes your proposed project or your trademark sign S goals and objectives, which should reflect those of the funder or your trademark sign S purpose. Always give back to the reviewers the same language used in the application for grant review criteria. Remember. Also, always write measurable objectives that state who will be affected, at-risk students, what the change will be, an increase of at least 20%, and by when, at the end of 1 year. Language concerning a time frame is optional in the objectives only when the grant application guidelines ask for a separate timeline section. The objectives or measurements stated in a grant announcement are like a big finger pointing in the direction you need to write in order to win a grant. The objectives shout out, write me for more about goals and objectives, head to Chapter 16. Demonstrating accountability with an evaluation plan. A sound evaluation plan, the next major part of your program design narrative, is essential to winning big review points. In some grant applications, the evaluation section is included as a component of the program design section. In others, ITA circumflex your trademark sign S a standalone section. Regardless of where ITA circumflex your trademark sign S placed, this section is usually weighted between 5 and 20 points. Typically, an evaluation plan focuses on two main questions. Was the program implemented effectively? This is the process evaluation. Did the program achieve its intended objectives and outcomes? This is the outcome evaluation. The evaluation plan should answer the following questions. What qualitative and quantitative measures will you collect data on? What data collection tools will you use to measure qualitative and quantitative data? How frequently will you measure the data? How will you use the data collected? How often will you implement corrective actions when the data shows that you are your trademark sign are falling short of your measurable objectives in any area? Who will conduct the evaluation? How will the results of your evaluation be shared with stakeholders? Tip: if you brought in a third-party evaluator during the planning stages of your project or service, they are automatically a member of the narrative writing team. The evaluator can write the entire evaluation plan section because they should be an expert in gleaning up program design and quickly developing research-driven evaluation plans. Head to the later area considering the use of third-party evaluator or see your section for more details on working with these folks. Proving your organization or your trademark sign S capability to manage a grant-funded project. The project management and overall organizational capability section of your grant application or cooperative agreement narrative typically carries double-digit peer review points, usually 10 to 20. If you are your trademark signery not capable of carrying out and managing a federal grant award, that inability will show up in this section in one way or another. In a well-constructed project management statement, you cite your organization or your trademark sign S capability and relevant experience in developing and operating programs that deal with problems similar to those addressed by the proposed project or service. You should also cite the organization or your trademark sign S experience in operating programs in cooperation with other community organizations, including collaborative partners. Also remember to identify your program or your trademark sign S executive leaders in the project management section. Briefly describe their involvement in the proposed project or service and provide assurance of their commitment to the successful implementation of that project or service. Tip: keep in mind that all key personnel, the people responsible for the project or your trademark sign S implementation, should have extensive experience in programs and services like the one you are your trademark sign proposing. You score more points during the review process if you can name actual staff members and show their titles and credentials instead of relying on the standard laureate to be hired or your statement. Note, don't know your trademark signee. Forget to identify your third-party evaluator up front. Be prepared to include a copy of their full copyright SUMA copyright in your appendixes, if requested. To advance your claims regarding project management, include documentation that briefly summarizes similar projects undertaken by your organization and note the extent to which your objectives were achieved. Also, record and justify the priority this project or service will have within your organization, including the facilities and resources available to carry out your plans. If you have volunteers, mentioning them, how many, what they do, and the value of their contribution to your organization, in this section is helpful. You can determine the value of a volunteer hour on the website https://independentsector.org/volunteer_time. Remember, losing even 1 or 2 points in the project management section can hurt you when the total score is tallied. Developing an expense-driven budget. Your budget forms and detailed narrative must show the grant reviewer that your costs are reasonable, allowable, and worth the result you seek. The budget section is usually worth the remaining review criteria points, 5 to 10, although not all funders score the budget as part of the review process. With your budget narrative, most government grants and cooperative agreements ask you to provide a detailed budget worksheet for each year of the project period. You also need to include an explanation of the basis for computation of all costs. See Chapter 18 for more about budget presentation. Remember, add up your budget, and then add it up again. Make sure each expense is directly related to an activity necessary to reach the project's objectives. Don't know your trademark signee. Introduce any costs here that you have under your trademark signee addressed in your main application narrative. When you read the guidelines for preparing the budget, look closely for any language about construction costs. Most government grants don't know your trademark signee cover new construction, but they do allow program-related renovations. Tip: when in doubt about the guidelines and how they relate to your budget, call and ask the government agency or your trademark signee's grants management officer. Then follow up with an email to create a paper trail for future reference. This contact even if it seems trivial can establish a relationship that may be beneficial in getting your grant funded. Validating needs and implementation strategies. You probably know a lot about the population you want to serve with your hoped-for grant monies. And if you hire your trademark signee at the grant writing stage for a program, you hire your trademark signee probably pretty well versed in what you want to accomplish and how you plan to go about putting the program in place. But to write an award-winning application, you need to beef up your facts with even more facts. Knowing the grant or cooperative agreement or your trademark signee's intent or focus sets the direction for the type of research you must do in order to write a high-scoring, competitive grant application. For example, if the monies are intended to fund a new economic development initiative for small businesses in Atlanta, you need to research demographics on the needs of small businesses in the county and city. You can get information about small business demographics by state by typing keywords into your favorite internet search engine or by using some of the resources available on your stat or your trademark signee's Small Business Development Center website. When I typed IRO statistics on Atlanta small businesses, links came back for multiple websites with recent reports on small businesses located in Atlanta. Tip: I always create an online electronic folder for my research data so I have it at my fingertips when I trademark sign am not at my home office or your trademark signee's computer, and I recommend that you do the same. Having access to critically needed information from all forms of mobile technology is the best plan when you may take your work home from the office and you need access to files. I use OneDrive, www.microsoft.com/en-us/Microsoft-365/OneDrive/online-cloud-storage, and have the mobile application downloaded on my smartphone, tablet, and laptops. Remember, when you hire your trademark signee on a grant application deadline, all your work may not be done during traditional work hours or in your traditional workspace. Tip: Google Scholar, http://scholar.google.com, is a great resource for finding publications if you are your trademark signee affiliated with a university. In addition, You are your trademark sign LL also have access to enormous publication databases. Publications produced by the government agencies that award grants are another good source for facts and figures. You can obtain these valuable resources from each government agency or your trademark sign's information clearinghouse. Check out agency websites for links labeled resources or publications. You may encounter any of the following publications, which can be of great help. Bulletins. These documents summarize recent findings from government program initiatives. Designed for users' references, they may contain graphics such as tables, charts, graphs, and photographs. You can recreate some of the most current and relevant graphics in your statement of need or program design. Fact sheets. Fact sheets highlight, in 1 to 2 pages, key points and sources of further information on government programs and initiatives. You can cite the most recent facts, never more than 5 years old, in your statement of need. Journals. These publications highlight innovative programs or contain articles on critical issues and trends. You can cite some of the model programs at the beginning of your program design section to show how your trademark sign remodeling your project on a successful program. You can also use any critical issues or trends covered in journals in your statement of need. Reports. These documents contain comprehensive research and evaluation findings, provide detailed descriptions of innovative programs implemented at the national, state, and local levels, and present statistical analysis, trends, or other data on selected topics. Reports may include explanations of case studies, field studies, and other strategies used for assessing program success and replication. Some reports provide training curricula and lesson plans as well. Summaries. Summaries describe key research and evaluation findings that may affect future policies and practices. Summaries highlight funded programs implemented at the national, state, or local level that may serve as models for other jurisdictions. These publications usually include appendixes, lists of resources, and additional readings. Tip: you can cite research on evaluation findings in your statement of need. Cite innovative programs considered models in your program design section to build the basis for proposing your own program model. Tip: I save every research-oriented publication I can get my hands on to my OneDrive cloud storage space by subject category. As new reports are published, I replace the older reports so that I trademark sign am working on my grant applications with the most current research findings. Grant writing is so much easier when you have the information you need, and the information you didn't your trademark sign to even know you needed, at your fingertips. The internet makes it easy to bookmark a favorite website. Remember, with so many ways to save your files, putting everything on your computer or your trademark sign's hard drive is not a wise idea. Hard drives fail, and when they do, your trademark sign may just plain out of luck. Circumflex your trademark sign lost a significant amount of research findings that cannot be easily replaced. Even depending on external drives for your research files can be devastating when your drives are damaged. I have yet to have a cloud drive disappear. I want to have my files stored in a place where they can be retrieved by any type of technology. Because I use cloud drives, a locked-up computer will not send me into a frenzy of stress. Considering the use of third-party evaluators. Writing an application for a federal grant or cooperative agreement requires making new friends in your community are not only collaborative partners, see Chapter 10, but also community specialists such as evaluators. You can always score more review points by using a third-party evaluator, basically a person or organization that operates objectively and gives you factual, third-party feedback on your grant-funded goals and objectives. As a frequent federal grant reviewer, I trademark sign am more likely to award more review points for the evaluation plan when a third-party evaluator is proposed. Even though evaluators are typically paid from grant funds, I know that they will call the situations as they see them when helping grant applicants develop data collection tools, collect and interpret data, and compile comprehensive evaluation reports for funders and other stakeholders. I cover the evaluation process in depth in Chapter 16. Tip: the following folks make excellent third-party evaluators. Evaluation consultants. These people normally have years of experience in the field of evaluation. You can often find evaluation consultants by calling your local community foundation. Community foundations often use evaluation consultants to assist in evaluating their own programs. retired college or university faculty. Often, these individuals have participated in the grant writing process and have even helped their college or university development offices design evaluations for government grant applications. Retired government personnel who worked in an administrative capacity in a finance department. These individuals usually have years or trademark sign worth of work experience in internal reporting requirements for major organizations or government agencies. As far as timing your trademark sign is concerned, the best time to bring in an evaluator is when you are your trademark sign sitting down with your staff and your collaborative partners to plan what you are your trademark sign LL propose in the grant or cooperative agreement application. Remember, running an online search for third-party evaluators is also helpful, but you may not locate an evaluator close to home. Using an evaluator who does know your trademark sign to live in your city or town is okay as long as they are familiar with the area, but keep in mind that hiring an evaluator from outside your region may increase the cost of the evaluation if site visits are necessary to plan and conduct the evaluation. Getting invited to join a peer review team. Before you start writing your grant application narrative, I want to share an insider secret with you about how to connect mentally and skill-wise to the peer review process. You can search for and sign up to become a government peer reviewer, also known as a grant reader. Yes, you. Simply type @call for peer reviewer into your favorite search engine or look directly on the Federal Funding Agency or Trademark Sign-S website. Desirable peer reviewer characteristics include the following. Formal education in the grant funding topic area. Volunteer experience in the grant funding topic area. Work experience in the grant funding topic area. Here are the benefits of participating in the government peer review process. You gain valuable insight into the peer review process. You experience firsthand how applications for a particular fund are evaluated and scored. Plus, you get to see how other grant writers state their cases, incorporate compelling graphics, and present research-based evidence of their need for the grant funding and how that funding will impact their target populations. You have the opportunity to network with other peer reviewers from throughout the United States and its territories. Today, most peer reviews are done online via a password-protected portal managed by the grant funding agency. My typical peer review assignments have required that I review 10 to 12 grant applications online and enter the strengths and weaknesses of each narrative section into the online text box windows. After I trademark sign completed my set of assigned grant applications, I notify the peer review manager. This person checks on the progress of the other peer reviewers assigned to the same set of grant applications as I reviewed. When the entire team is ready, the peer review manager schedules a conference call, lasting from 2 to 4 hours, for the consensus discussion. This team peer review process, where you must come to a consensus on the final scoring for each application, is when you are acquainted with many types of connected individuals. By connected individuals, I mean people who are experts in the grant funding field. These same people can become your best friends when you need a third-party evaluator, or a referral for one, or when you need a copy of a successful grant application via your trademark sign written for a particular funding agency. You get paid. At the federal government level, compensation is about $125 per grant application reviewed, or more depending on the agency or trademark sign-S budget for the peer review process. At the state government agency level, the compensation is typically not as much as Uncle Sam or your trademark sign-S lucrative offer. Most often, state grant-making agencies set a flat rate for reviewing 10 to 20 grant applications. If you don't your trademark sign to have a full-time day job working as a grant writer for an employer, taking on state agency grant reviews may not be financially worth the effort required by grant writing consultants. I trademark sign been paid as low as $750 for reviewing 15 applications to as high as $2,500 for reviewing 20 applications and spending 6 hours in multiple change in the peer review process or types of calls. At best, ITA circumflex your trademark sign is not always the smoothest process for the reviewer, but the experience you gain is worth a pot of gold. Remember, sometimes, if the peer review database is already full, you may not be contacted for months or even a year or longer. But don't your trademark sign to give up. Continue to email the agency your trademark sign-S peer reviewer database contact person and indicate your enthusiasm about being invited to participate in the peer review process. You may have to update your RA copyright SUMA copyright in the peer review application every year, so make a note on your annual calendar now. Tip: a federal agency constantly looking for peer reviewers is the U.S. Department of Justice Bureau of Justice Assistance.